Bring this over here or bring my microphone up. Wow, I've been talking all this time with my microphone well away from me. So,
Yeah.
welcome to the Standout CEO Show. This is
You
your
sound even
gateway.
better now. I mean,
Oh,
before you sounded great. So,
right. Well, the closer you are to your microphone, this is pro tip, the better you sound. And
shock and awe. And who would have thought?
so we're talking about personal brand and we're talking about branding in general today. And I'm just demonstrating how I demonstrate my personal brand, which is don't try to be perfect. It's okay to do things that aren't exactly the way that they should be and like not happen exactly the way they want them to, kind of laugh it off. And I think this is apropos to today's topic. Like, I think that this is a really great way to connect with exactly the right people for you. Because if people see you doing kinds of things like this and it resonates for them, they go, oh, this person is just like me. I would do something like that. That's the kind of thing that I would do. Well, now we found each other. Like I found a kindred spirit out there. So today's question, the big one is, how do you make sure that your brand will connect with the right audience? And like, how do you create that consistent, super cohesive brand that, lets you show off like who you are and show off the thing that you're wanting to be known for? And I have brought branding specialist Kelly Wittman onto the show today to help us address these questions, to answer these questions. Because the thing is, like, if people don't understand who you are and what you're about, what you stand for, the things you believe in, then they're not going to have a really easy time in figuring out like whether they want to work with you or even what the heck you even do. So this is the thing that we're discussing today. If you're interested in getting your brand known for the thing that you do, then listen up, stay tuned. And Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brad. I'm very much looking forward. I love chatting all things branding and really getting into conversation and sharing some of that great information about exactly what you said. How do you build that brand with your right audience? So I'm excited to dig in.
Right. All right. Well, I would like to start off with this question, which is in the world of branding, like we hear a lot about branding. It's just one of those buzzwords out there. What's something in that realm, in the category that you live and breathe in? What's your pet peeve? Like, what do you hear, from time to time or maybe often that really bugs you or turns you off?
Oh, this is a great question. I would say, I think the biggest fallacy and misconception about branding is that, oh, I've got my fonts and my logo and my colors, so I have my brand. And a lot of times when if we're talking to clients or just having conversations with people about the work that I do in the studio that I have, oh yeah, I have my logo, I've got a brand, I'm okay at it. And when we kind of getting back to this idea that we started with of building a brand that really connects with your right people, it's so much more than that. It's a lot of the work. Yes, having a logo is important, and yes, having fonts and consistency with your colors is important to really create that connection. But to get there, a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and I would say that's probably my biggest frustration with that understanding or thinking that if you've got a logo, you're ready to go and you've got what you need.
Right. All right. So let's dive into the work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So if I'm going, okay, well, let's see what I got to do some work behind the scenes. Like, where do you start? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I like to think about it as your internal and then your external brand. So the external is what we just talked about, right? So everything that your community, your market, your audience is seeing. So the logos, the fonts, the colors, the website. Your internal is then what happens behind the scenes. And I think about that in terms of your strategy. So really, what is the communication for your plan for your brand, your message? So what's that common thread that's woven into everything that you talk about? And then your personality, which is your voice, your communication style, the words and phrases that you're using. And together, these three pieces or components really create that foundation for then bringing out and creating the external. So based off of, how you want your brand to be communicated and what you're saying and the personality, it then will guide the visual direction. So, you can select colors based off of how you want people to feel about your brand and the typography that you select. So everything plays a part, but most often is we jump right to the external before doing that internal work.
Yeah, I really like the word personality when it
Yeah.
comes to brand. And we all have one, and it's really interesting, like uh, in, school and in the dating world, having a great personality was often seen as kind of a diss. Like, oh, that person has a great personality, and it meant like they're boring.
Yeah.
But in the branding world, it's actually really critical.
Yes, it
So
is.
when you look at, like, when you're talking with a client and they're coming to you and saying, okay, well, I need to figure out like how to express my personality through my brand. What are the building blocks, the first steps that you take people through when you're doing that kind of work?
Yeah. Oh, such a great question. And to just echo your point, yes, brand personality is so important. And it's really what people connect with, right? And that's what they build. When we can personify what we want our brand to be, it helps our audience and our market connect and build a relationship with us as a brand and as a business. So when we think about actually building that personality, I like to start with just a simple question, not easy, but simple, which is, how do you want people to feel when they experience your brand? So whether we are intentional about it or not, people are feeling a certain way about our brand when they come in contact with us on social media, when they see us, see you on a podcast. They are perceiving your a certain way. They are associating your brand with certain feelings, and we often forget that we can be intentional about it. So just identifying, okay, what are the 5 to 10 adjectives that I want people to associate and feel and think when they experience my brand is a really great place to start, just to define what that intentionality looks like, and then building on it from there.
Yeah, right. All right. So I'm defining my personality. I'm looking for how are people, like, what are people going to feel when they have any experience of me and or the work that we do, and kind of with everything we do. And that's the thing that I want to talk about a little bit, is like, when we're looking at, well, if I'm talking about doing this with everything I do and with every time somebody experiences something to do with my company, my work, we're talking about consistency here. And so when, especially like when you look at any form of online marketing, I mean, there's the one thing to do with your website, which is not necessarily going to change rapidly over time. It's this glorified billboard that sits there and has a lot of good messaging on it. But we need to be out there in the world expressing ourselves and sharing our message in a variety of different ways. And this is where this thing of, well, what do I want people to feel when they come into contact with me? And it can also be not just with your messaging, but then when you're, having people go through their customer journey with you, like whether they're a person who just found out about you, and whether they're being nurtured by you, and whether they're now sitting down in front of you deciding whether or not to work with you. And then, of course, when they're actually working with you in person, like when you're doing the work, all of that together needs that same brand experience. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So when we define, okay, we have that clarity around this is really what I'm after in terms of how I want people to feel when they experience my brand. The next step is to do exactly what you have said, which is understand all brand touch points. It can feel a little overwhelming. I totally get that. So I usually recommend with starting with the most trafficked, right? So if your website is where you primarily market your business and engage with your audience, because maybe you have a blog or you do a podcast that goes on your website, starting with the most heavily engaged spaces, you can audit and really understand, okay, am I aligned with those feelings that I'm after and those adjectives, and doing just a either or kind of question, like going to your website and saying, does this really, if I want relaxed and calm, rejuvenated, does this website that, and doing an audit, what I consider like a personality audit in terms of those various brand touch points. The other thing that's helpful to think about is how would you bring to life those adjectives? What does that mean for you? Because a lot of times as well, when we think about how we want people to feel, I might define that differently than what you would define it. So maybe having, relaxed for me is, actually I'll use a word that I hear a lot with the travel clients. They use luxury. I want my brand to feel luxurious. I'm like, okay. For me, as a mom with a 1.5-year-old, luxury is getting 5 minutes of peace versus for another person who doesn't have kids, or they have older kids, or they're retired, luxury is going away for a month. So really thinking about what do those words actually mean for your brand, and defining them and using that as well as your gauge and your filter for bringing that personality to life. Clarity around, okay, this is really the personality in terms of the adjectives that I, and this is how I'm defining them. And that last piece is, what are the words, the phrases, that tone of voice that really then brings to life and helps to evoke those feelings and thoughts and emotions that you're after?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of what we're talking about here is this, and this is along the theme of this show, is really differentiation. If you're like, if you're in the travel industry and you just say, well, luxury, that's the same word that a whole bunch of other people in the travel industry use. And so this thing of, well, what does that mean? And so first of all, you'd want to speak to, well, who's my audience? If your audience are busy moms with 3-year-olds, you're going to give them a whole different, that's a great example of luxury for them is 5 minutes without their brain, being interrupted by their kid. That's luxury. It's an amazing, luxurious feeling, as opposed to somebody who is retired. And what does luxury look like for them? For example, a really extreme end of the spectrum. So when we're looking at that and sort of wanting to bring to life the ways in which that we're really different, I think that one of the things, and this is a pet peeve that I have, I think most brands have this fear of being offensive in some way. Like they look out into the business world and the professional world, and they're wanting to be professional and they're wanting to be buttoned down. And you go look at their website and it's in shades of blue, and they have a bunch of people with suits and ties and professional outfits on, and they're all sitting there with their arms crossed, looking sideways, at the camera like this and smiling. And one group of people like that, this is our team, and it's like they look the same as the team on the other website. And there's no personality, there's no bringing to life. They look actually like, stock images, which is what they probably are. They're not the actual people from the company. And, and we see this all the time. And part of this is that they're just not wanting to look, offensive in any way. Like we can't look radical. We can't look like we're standing outside the box, because if we do that, people won't think we are quote unquote professional. So talk a little bit about that from the point of view of challenging the status quo in some way with your brand.
I love that I will just echo back 100%. Your brand personality is a great way to differentiate yourself from others in your space and in your industry. And even just to piggyback off what you said, you described something that is not memorable, that does not foster or fuel connection, and doesn't foster relationship building. And that I'd like to just take it a step back of, well, then what's the purpose and point of having a brand, right? I am a huge proponent and believer that your brand is created and intended to support your business and your goals and connect with your right audience so that you can do more good work in this world, that you can have more impact, change more lives, serve more people. If even just using your example, right, if we have a website that looks like a stock, it was just very blue stock images, It does absolutely nothing to support your business and your business goals and building connection with your audience, which is fine. But just from like a perspective of, I just did a presentation actually on brand personality last week, and there was a statistic done by Sprout Social, and they found I believe it was 76% of when we think about engaged and emotionally connected audience, they spend 76% more with your business than if they're just satisfied. So, yes, you can maintain, right, the status quo, but when we think about supporting your business and reaching your goals and attaining that version of success that you're at, the personality and creating a brand that's memorable and fueled by connection will, without a doubt, help you achieve that better, much faster and quicker. And I would argue it's a lot more fun when you think about having an engaged audience and one that you really are connected with and showing up for and serving, and that they actually like you and they want to build a relationship with you. I would make the argument that it's just a lot that way versus having, the standard stock photos and something that they're connecting with, that they're more, they don't have a strong opinion one way or another. And to kind of maybe even just feed off of your question a little bit more about this idea of polarization, that is what needs to happen. That's going to happen. It's just a natural next step when you create a personality. Thinking about the people in your own life. Do you get along with everyone? The people you get along with all the time, or that you maybe even another way that you don't have opinions on, are forgettable, and you forget about them. But the people that you have strong relationships with and a strong connection with, you don't forget them, even if it's maybe not a very positive experience. They're not forgettable. And the goal here, and we think about our brand, is to connect with our right people. And you are not going to be for everyone. It's physically impossible for you to serve everybody well, and to do your job well and to show up for them well. So I know I get really fired up about this, but I'm a huge proponent of picking your audience and showing up for them. And that's what your brand personality is here, is to support your audience, not to support everyone.
Yeah, I love that. Well, all right. So let's share an example of this. Like maybe with clients, a client that you've worked with, you don't necessarily have to name them if you don't want to, but just talk about one of your more courageous, risk-taking clients who has actually brought their personality out in this creative way, this very cohesive, consistent way, and in fact are targeting a group of people who are for them, or that they are for the, and they're not for everybody.
Yeah, we're actually working with a travel agent. We do a lot of, one of my clients, she's a travel agent educator, so we get the opportunity to work with a lot of her students, which is so fun. We're working with a travel agent right now, and she, her business name is Queen of Fun Travel, and we've created her message is for, travel for sassy, savvy travel queens. So even just her overarching message is very polarizing, because that it's not going to resonate with everybody. But that's the intent. Yeah. Her colors are bold and bright. Yeah. But that's the goal, right? Is I think too, the other thing that's worth sharing is that even though it's not, I would argue that you appreciate it and that you find joy, even and entertainment, and like have that chuckle. You kind of laughed, or like, oh, haha, that's funny. Like that's the point, right? Is it's helping you really quickly self-identify of whether or not you are a good fit for that person. But in addition, you also then can maybe, I would argue, it helps you identify who someone who fits under that bell, and you're that much quicker to reference and to refer the right person to her business, because who would be a good fit for her. And that's the other piece too about defining our ideal client, is when we're crystal clear on who we're a great fit for, maybe it polarizes someone and turns someone off, but it will then be a really great impetus for finding the right people, because they'll know right away if they are a good fit or if they're not a good fit. And even if they're not, I would imagine that they'll be able to find or send someone who is, because they can understand who you are working with. So kind of back to this travel agent, we're using really bright colors. We're in the process of designing her website right now. But we're bright colors, very bold fonts, very fun, bright, saturated images. Bright, bold, bubbly is the three words that we are her brand personality and the feeling. And we're having a lot of fun with it. I'm flexing my creative skills and my designer's creative skills. We've been able to stretch it a little bit. But that's, I think, also the other piece is when you have the confidence to really step into that personality that you want. Yes, of course, she's had some questions. We've had conversations of, oh, can I do this? I'll use another example. We worked with an interior designer this last fall, and the word that she wanted associated was provocative. And the colors that we're using is kind of like these sultry reds and blacks and whites. It's very dark. It's moody. And that's what she wanted to align with, was provocative. And we had a very lengthy conversation around the benefits, the drawbacks, and she was all in. She's like, yep, that's what I want to lead with. And I think it really comes from, as a founder, of having that confidence. And yes, there'll be times trying to waver and I don't know, but the benefit of really sticking it out, honing in and stepping into that personality, you will really connect with the people that you are meant to.
Yeah, well, the thing that I love about that first example is that the brand itself exactly matches the ideal client. So sassy travel queen, like immediately in the mind's eye, I know exactly the stereotype, like who that person is. I've met them. I've seen them. I've traveled and bumped into them, I know who that person is. So it's so helpful, not from the point of view of just the person who is that person is going, oh yeah, that's me. You're talking directly to me. But everybody else, even the people who, she's not talking to, immediately knows who it is she's talking about. And of course, can refer and or say, oh, by the way, I've heard this thing. If she had a podcast, the Travel Sassy Queen podcast, people would recommend it because it's like, okay, you need to hear this podcast. Really great word of mouth potential right there.
Yeah, I'm going to have to tell her that. I had a conversation about her today and she needs to start a podcast now. That's her next endeavor. But I think the other piece, right, as the founder, she is super snarky and sarcastic. Fun. It's been a great opportunity for her to bring her personality to light and let it showcase and come through and not try to tamp it down and be the stock photo, professional, straight and narrow, typical agency, or not even typical, but the typical business, I guess. So it's just been a lot of fun. I think that's the other piece, kind of going back to what I was saying before, of it's a lot more fun when you can really lean into the personality and enjoyable and bringing it to life and not having to just tamp it down or feel like you have to be something that you're not.
Yeah, super. Well, we are coming to the to the end of our time together. We have just barely scratched the surface of what we could be talking about. But if there's one piece that's sitting there in your back pocket that we haven't approached that you would like to share today, what would that be?
Just don't be afraid of really leaning into, building off of what I shared. Don't be afraid of leaning into what you want your brand personality to be, especially if it's different from what you're seeing in your space, in your category. Because kind of bringing it back to the very beginning of this conversation, that personality is a really great differentiator. And if you're not seeing it in your space, there's probably people out there that wish it existed. And it's just a matter of building up that personality and finding the right people who resonate with it. Because I promise that they're out there and they're just waiting for you.
Yeah, right. All right, Kelly, if people want to hook up with you, they go, okay, I'm inspired. I've got some personality that I need help sharing. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yes, I know we're streaming this on LinkedIn, so I would love to connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect there. Otherwise, our website, wittandcompany.com, is another great place just to learn about our work. And we send out weekly newsletters every Friday called the Branded Chat. So if you want to just be more in the circle and get in on the information that we're sharing on branding and business, feel free to join on the website as well.
All right. Well, I'll make sure links to your stuff are in the show notes.
Thank you.
Kelly Wittman is Wittman, so you can search
Yes.
for her on LinkedIn. And when you're doing that, Witt and Company, that URL, that there's 2 T's and no H in Wittman.
Thank you for sharing that. I forget, everyone. Yep, I think it's automatic, but yes, we get that a lot.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been great and fun.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad. Yes, it's been a very fun conversation.
Yeah. And thank you for listening today. If you're here at the end, I just want to remind you that if you'd like to go and binge the entire archive of the Standout CEO Show, you can just go to standoutceoshow.com. All the audio, all the video is there. You can binge to your heart's content. And until the next time, so long.